the boats. It's not a moat. Not a moat.
Is Zavala talking to you?
Yeah, why?
I hear Keith David.
In the shadows of Omaha, Nebraska, there lurked monstrosities the world had yet to fathom. It was the quintessential Midwestern town, yet beneath the serenity, a malignant darkness festered. It was here that a vile scandal of systemic sexual abuse and satanic worship unfolded within the very institutions that were meant to protect the city from itself. In the mid-1980s, the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union served the most disenfranchised and underprivileged communities of Omaha. It operated under the guidance of Lawrence E. King Jr. He was a socialite, friends with those who were in positions of power, politicians and police who found themselves indebted to his favor. King sat on the boards of charitable organizations and seemed to give back to his community. But beneath this crafted exterior pulsed a darkness accused of some of the worst crimes imaginable. Investigators initiated an audit of the credit union, uncovering malicious and grotesque deceit. King was charged with 40 counts of embezzlement, fraud, and tax evasion, stealing over $39 million. Yet, the startling revelation of his financial crimes would only be the beginning. The investigation uncovered a horrifying narrative, stitched together by the testimonies of children. They named King as the architect of nightmares like ritualized abuse, cultist ceremonies, and a web of political blackmail that implicated figures like Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. They described a sinister underbelly of cruelty and corruption, the aftermath of which still echoes through the nation. The story of the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union begs a profoundly unsettling question. What if the very institutions meant to protect become the architecture of unimaginable horror? The Franklin Community Federal Credit Union was established in 1968 with the intention of making credit accessible to the African American community of North Omaha. It was a low-income credit union formed by community activists. It was a cornerstone of communal support, and it attracted deposits from charities, nonprofit organizations, and struggling individuals. The credit union offered certificates of deposit to non-members, and they provided financial services and education for residents, even helping when they couldn't cover their water or power bills. Lawrence E. King Jr. would become the manager in 1970, just 2 years after its establishment. Under his direction, the Franklin Credit Union expanded its services, like the initiative with the Consumer Service Organization, which managed welfare, disability, and Social Security checks. This expansion allowed a significant addition to the coffers of the Franklin Credit Union. King began offering high-interest certificates of deposit. They marked at 2 to 3% above market rates in an attempt to secure greater deposits at the credit union, and it was instrumental to the growth of the institution. However, it quickly became a Ponzi scheme where additional CDs were required to cover payments for maturing ones. These rates attracted investments and grants from corporate powerhouses and religious organizations, securing millions for the credit union. King leveraged these perceived successes to network with the movers and shakers of Omaha and later, the national political arena. King started as a McGovern Democrat, but he changed his affiliation and became the chairperson of the National Black Republican Council. He was tasked with coordinating efforts to mobilize the black vote across 17 states, a role that placed him at the confluence of national politics and community outreach. King was a rising star of the GOP. He sang the Star-Spangled Banner at a Republican event in 1982 that was attended by President Reagan, and he sang the national anthem in 1988 at the RNC in New Orleans. Throughout the 80s, King became increasingly embedded in the Republican Party at the state and national level. His position with the Franklin Credit Union afforded him an annual salary of $16,000 a year, but King drove a $70,000 white Mercedes, chartered private jets and limousines, and rented multiple apartments and houses in Washington, D.C. and Omaha. He explained that his wealth came from old family money. The truth was much more sinister. King was exploiting his position at the credit union to fund his extravagant and debaucherous lifestyle. The Franklin Credit Union provided King with an inexhaustible bankroll. He expanded into multiple business ventures, owning restaurants and bars, including Omaha's Showcase Lounge, which was known to be frequented by pimps and sex workers. He began to donate heavily to Boys Town, a large orphanage in western Omaha started in 1917 as a shelter for young boys left behind with no family after World War I. In the 1990s, it was worth $500 million. The organization had expanded to owning its own school and church, where over 500 homeless and abandoned children were housed. Still, it was considered the richest square mile in the world. King also joined the board of directors for the Omaha Girls Club. He began to funnel vulnerable children from both organizations into his home, businesses, and parties under the guise of empowerment and employment. These children would allege realities far more horrifying than anyone could have anticipated. Before the shutdown of the Franklin Credit Union in November 1988, before the senatorial investigation and public unraveling, a complex web of disturbing rumors began to surface. These early whispers were first shared with law enforcement officers, social workers, and foster care administrators, hinting at a deeply entrenched network of sexual exploitation, abuse, and even satanic ritual, all implicating the city's most prominent figures. These initial reports were sporadic and often dismissed or downplayed by those in positions of authority, but as more victims came forward, the horrifying scope of these allegations could no longer be ignored. On June 10, 1985, a social worker with the Nebraska Department of Social Services received a call from the Sheriff's Department in Washington County. Records indicate the call was about child abuse complaints under the foster care of Jarrett and Barbara Webb. Jarrett was a board member of the Franklin Credit Union, and Barbara was Lawrence King's cousin. The call detailed 3 foster children who had significant bodily injuries. The children complained of abuse from their foster parents. They claimed that they had been beaten with a railroad iron and belt. The Webbs fostered 9 children, and more than half had run away from home in the past. During later investigations, DSS would remove several siblings from the home after reports from 6 of the children that they had been stripped nude and beaten for extended periods of time, and they had been denied meals. Unfortunately, the abuse didn't stop there. One victim, Lisa Webb, told Jane Tooley of the Sheriff's Department that she had been sexually abused since the age of 9. The Washington County prosecutor, Patrick Tripp, didn't believe Lisa's testimony. He required that she take 4 separate polygraph tests. She passed all 4 times, but Tripp attempted to discredit her, claiming that her story was too fantastical to be real. Tragically, this pattern of skepticism and disbelief would be a trend among investigators and prosecutors. Other children in the Webb home claimed to have found graphic images and videotapes, some portraying underage victims. They reported hearing that these materials had been produced and provided by Lawrence King. Julie Walters, a youth care worker at Boys Town, developed an extensive 51-page report based on interviews with Nellie and Kimberly Webb. She had extensive experience working with children who had suffered abuse, and she emphasized that the Webb children seemed truthful. Their narratives shared a remarkable level of detail, thematic consistency, and implicated figures, only enhancing their credibility. Nellie Webb reported that King would attend parties at the Omaha Girls Club, or he would throw parties at his home. King would call the Webbs and tell them to provide 1 or more children who would be forced to attend. She claimed the parties were attended by 30 adult patrons seeking the company of sex workers and children who were commingled. They would pay money, and the encounters would happen in communal areas, side rooms, or bedrooms. Horrifyingly, Nellie spoke about King flying her to Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C., where she met significant political players, including Vice President George Bush Sr. She described that these parties had countless bodyguards, admission key cards, and pat-down security, and behind closed doors, she saw powerful politicians engaged with young male sex workers. The Walters Report was given to the Department of Social Services in 1986, but there seemed to be little, if any, investigative interest. Barbara and Jarrett Webb lost their foster license, but they were not subject to any criminal charges for the abuses perpetrated. Separately, a 17-year-old girl and her mother filed a report with the Omaha Police Department after participating in an illicit photography session. The photographer, Rusty Nelson, approached the 17-year-old to be his subject for a European portfolio he was developing. The girl and her mother followed Nelson to his apartment for a 5-hour session where Nelson made inappropriate remarks and attempted to convince the girl to pose nude. The girl's mother noticed several nude photographs in the studio. Many of the subjects appeared to be minors. Officer Carmian interviewed the 2 women about the exploitation attempts of Rusty Nelson. They claimed that Nelson spoke of being self-employed, but regularly spoke of someone he called the boss. Investigators arrived at his apartment, and they found it had been vacated just 9 days after the initial report. The lease for Unit 3B in the Twin Towers apartment complex was registered under the name Lawrence King. When the FBI spoke with King, he said he had evicted Nelson when he heard about the incident. Officers discovered that King rented several units in the Twin Towers complex, including the penthouse, and an interview with the building manager revealed rumors that King was a heavy drug dealer with a preference for young boys. Nelson would later contend that King used his deep bankroll to make the investigation go away. Nelson would not be indicted on these charges, and he would disappear for several years before making critical contributions to the investigation in 1990. In 1988, Officer Carmian was dispatched to interview Shawnetta Moore, a 15-year-old girl whose testimony involved the same themes, players, and patterns of abuse, pointing again to a broad exploitation network within the city of Omaha. Moore was located at Richard Young Hospital, where she had told her therapist that she was the victim of nude photography and suffered at the hands of powerful men committing satanic rituals. Moore reported that she was friends with Kimberly and Nellie Webb, and that it began when all 3 of them were earning money by modeling for an unnamed photographer who was likely Rusty Nelson. Moore claimed that many of those photographing and purchasing photographs were leaders of the North Omaha Girls Club. She claimed she was coerced with threats of violence and that she reported the photography network to law enforcement and the superintendent of her school, Deward Finch. Finch was mentioned in previous testimony as a friend and frequent visitor of the Webbs, and nothing came from her criminal report. Moore reported that she was gradually introduced to ritualistic parties where kids were drugged. She described graphic and indecent acts performed by men at these parties, and she identified Lawrence King by name. She claimed that many of these ritualistic parties occurred at a home owned by King on Wirt Street. The investigating officer drove to the area and saw King's name printed on the awning of the home. The officer's report indicated that Moore seemed reluctant to trust, especially when King's name was mentioned, and it wasn't until later in 1988 that she was completely forthcoming. Her disturbing testimony about satanic ritual and abuse was later collected and entered into the Franklin Committee's senatorial investigation and report. Shawnetta Moore's testimony included descriptions of the homicides of several children, and she named King as a leading participant. She attended parties that were identical to the testimonies of the Webbs. She remembered votive candles scattered around the room, men cloaked in long robes, and descriptions of the rituals as power meetings. Smith recounted that she was locked in a room with a Caucasian infant and told that she could achieve great power by killing something that she really loved. The men decapitated the infant and removed the eyes before leaving the room. Smith stayed in the room overnight and described hearing whippings and beatings in the building. She was released the next day and told to return for the next power meeting. In fear for her life, she complied, and she saw the superintendent of her school and Lawrence King in attendance. She described 5 other instances of ritualistic sacrifice, the details of which are more graphic than those already cited and included prolonged acts of dismemberment and cannibalism. Officer Carmian took these initial reports and told doctors at the Richard Young Hospital that he would return for more information. However, he never did. Carol Stitt later recounted to the Franklin Committee that caseworkers, employees, and therapists called Carmian requesting that he return because Smith was still sharing new accounts. Senator Ernie Chambers would uncover that Carmian had been transferred out of investigations. Chambers would recall, "I felt he'd been transferred because he was getting too close to something, and his superiors did not want him to continue." Some questioned Moore's credibility. She had been hospitalized and suffered severe psychological trauma, and law enforcement reported that she had a history of bizarre interactions with officers. However, the Foster Care Review Board Executive Director, Carol Stitt, believed her testimony was highly credible. The chronology and the details were concrete, and they overlapped in detail with the Webbs, all of whom implicated Lawrence King. But this was only the beginning. Carol Stitt believed that the Omaha Police Department was failing to investigate thoroughly, or had even resorted to intimidating and discrediting witnesses. They seemed determined to make these stories go away. But still, the reports continued to grow in number. In May 1988, Kirsten Hallberg, an employee at Richard Young Hospital, reported 7 additional witnesses who had similarly horrifying and disturbing accounts connecting back to Lawrence King. Accounts that would soon be made public. Whispers about financial mismanagement at the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union continued throughout the 1980s. In 1981, an anonymous letter was sent to the National Credit Union Association about misdeeds, and a limited investigation uncovered $400,000 in missing funds. In 1984, Edward Hobbs wrote a letter to the Franklin Board detailing embezzlement at the credit union. He was a former teller at the bank and he was fired the day after sharing his letter. From 1984 to 1988, the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union escaped watchdog audits from federal organizations. King and several of his employees delayed and excused these potential audits to cover up their theft. But in 1988, the National Credit Union Association closed Franklin for unsafe and unsound practices, and a forensic financial accounting was conducted. 1 week later, they announced that millions of dollars of high-interest certificates of deposit had been hidden from federal examiners in the past. The total was $4 million in assets and liabilities and $30 million in missing funds. The total would later be raised to $39 million. On November 18, 1988, the state legislature demanded an investigation of the Franklin closure. The Franklin Committee was formed to investigate the neglect and financial mismanagement of the credit union, but the scope of their investigation would become much larger. The Franklin Committee was run by State Senator Loren Schmidt and State Senator Ernie Chambers. Both senators faced significant political headwinds, credibility concerns, and even dissension through the lifespan of the committee. But they were dedicated to the pursuit of truth and justice. On December 12, 1988, Senator Ernie Chambers received allegations of physical and sexual child abuse related to the Franklin Credit Union. The source of these allegations was never named. The senatorial committee was only beginning to uncover a malignant nightmare, the scope of which they had yet to imagine. On December 19th, Carol Stitt, Dennis Carlos, and Burrell Williams of the Foster Care Review Board recounted the allegations of abuse to the Franklin Committee. The first investigator hired was Jerry Lowe, a former Lincoln policeman, and by July 1989, he had gathered a great deal of secondhand evidence, including witness testimony and some financial records indicating the Omaha police chief had spent time with King at his Washington, D.C. residence. However, without substantial evidence, Senator Schmidt worried the case would fall apart. Senator Ernie Chambers and investigator Lowe resigned. By August, the Franklin Committee hired Gary Caradori, a former state patrolman, and with his assignment, the case took an even darker turn. Gary Caradori made public appeals for information, calling for victims to come forward. He networked with disgruntled social workers and advocates to identify potential victims who were hesitant to come forward. Despite the resistance and skepticism of law enforcement, he made connections with Omaha police officers and agents who reported on abuse. This holistic approach, combined with previous evidence, allowed Caradori to find and identify victims who were willing to go on the record. 4 victims allowed their testimony to be video and audio recorded. They were Alicia Owen, Troy Boner, Danny King, and Paul Bonacci. Caradori and his assistant Karen Ormiston interviewed 21-year-old Alicia Owen at the Women's Reformatory in York, Nebraska. Owen was reluctant to involve herself initially, but on November 7, 1989, she told Caradori that she had become involved with Lawrence King in August 1983, when she was just 14 years old. Troy Boner and another boy from Boys Town had invited her to a party at King's penthouse in the Twin Towers complex, just a few floors away from where photographer Rusty Nelson had been investigated. She identified prominent businessmen like Alan Baer and Harold Anderson, and the police chief, Robert Wadman. The following accounts are deeply disturbing. While her first party was in August, Owen attended multiple parties at the Twin Tower penthouse. They had fewer than 10 adults, with nearly twice as many minors, reportedly around the ages of 14 or 15. The same men were often in attendance. These parties were well stocked with drugs and alcohol, and the room featured a television set which played pornography. Owen remembered seeing many boys in varying states of dress. The boys would often be sitting in the laps of men. Attendees would retreat to back bedrooms, or other times, the abuse would occur in the main room, in front of others. Owen described being assaulted by Police Chief Wadman on multiple occasions. During her taped recounting, she would request moments to stop and regain her composure. She claimed that Wadman is likely the father of her child. Owen confirmed what many of the other testimonies had already stated. She recounted private flights with King to Los Angeles, where she was victimized by violent men. This story would be corroborated by another witness interviewed by Caradori. When asked about satanic activity, Owen described a house in Leavenworth where a pentagram was painted on the kitchen floor. The home was filled with demonic pictures, and she mentioned a man named King's Horses, who frequently attended the parties and oversaw King's dirty work. She claimed that King's Horses was deeply involved in occult ritual. Rusty Nelson and Lawrence King directed photography sessions at many of these parties, and Owen was forced to participate or receive physical beatings. She speculated that Nelson kept the negatives of these sessions to blackmail King. With the resulting testimony from his first witness, Caradori would recommend 62 individuals and documents to be subpoenaed, and he provided a list of alleged perpetrators, including Lawrence King, Police Chief Wadman, Harold Anderson, Alan Baer, Superintendent Deward Finch, Peter Citrone, and Judge Theodore Carlson. Caradori was directed by Owen to speak with Troy Boner. He visited Troy's mother, who described him as a boy with a great weight on his shoulder, who was unwilling to share. On November 25th at 4 a.m., Troy called Caradori, and the two spoke for an hour. Troy seemed paranoid, interrogating Caradori on his intentions and affiliation with law enforcement. When Troy began to share that he had been abused and deeply scarred by what happened, Caradori insisted that they not discuss it over the phone, and the two agreed to meet the following day. Caradori videotaped the conversation with his second witness on November 25th, 1989. Troy corroborated much of Owen's testimony, although some dates did not match. He confirmed that he had witnessed Police Chief Wadman assault Owen, and he named many of the same locations that Owen had mentioned. Troy explained that it began when he met Alan Baer in 1983. Another boy had taken him to an apartment on the second floor of the Twin Towers complex and introduced him to Baer, where he was abused and paid several $100s per meeting. Baer gave a picture of Troy to Lawrence King, and King approached him at the Max Bar, a prominent bar in the gay community. King paid Troy for similar abuses, and King moved Troy into a Travelodge Inn for 3 weeks, where the two met almost every afternoon. Troy would eventually be moved to an apartment owned by King, where he and other minors were frequently abused. In May 1985, Troy recruited another minor, Danny King, and introduced him to Baer just as he had been introduced. Troy, Danny, and Owen would frequently be flown on private charter planes or directed to take commercial flights to California, where they met with sadistic pedophiles. Troy claimed that some minors were not on return flights, and he assumed they had been sold or killed. With Troy's videotaped testimony, Senator Schmidt and Caradori were fearful about how to proceed, given that the institutions of power in Omaha were directly implicated. Danny King was employed, but in the process of being evicted when Caradori met him. Caradori and Troy picked up King from his apartment, where he gathered his things. Caradori filmed the interview with his third witness at a Residence Inn on December 5th, 1989. Danny confirmed that he met Bear through Troy's introduction in 1983. He was 13 or 14 years old at the time. The two drank schnapps, and Danny accepted abuse for a payment of $50, and this continued every week for 7 months until Danny was introduced to Lawrence King. The three would do drugs at Bear's residence, and Danny would be beaten and unpaid if he didn't perform certain acts to King's liking. The videotaped interview of Danny King ran nearly 6 hours, and in the days following, Caradori drove him through Omaha to confirm several of the named locations, including the apartment of Alan Bear. The 21 hours of testimony from Owen, Troy, and Danny corroborated multiple events, locations, and people in their separate accounts, and they were confirmed by testimony from other witnesses who refused to go on record. The footage was submitted to the Nebraska Attorney General's office and the U.S. Attorney on December 27, 1989. While this was a necessary step in escalating the accusations of corruption, child abuse, and Satanism, Caradori worried about the welfare of his witnesses, given the history of corruption. He housed his witnesses and supplied them with food and goods. He advocated that they receive physical and psychiatric care, and he worried about harassment similar to what the Webbs and Owen had already suffered. At the same time, Senator Schmidt and his attorney John DeCamp spoke with an agent at the FBI field office in Omaha to discuss law enforcement's inaction in previous investigations. They implicated prominent figures and shared that Police Chief Wadman had been named as an alleged perpetrator. The agent told Schmidt and DeCamp that he was close friends with Wadman and that the committee would receive the full and direct scrutiny of the FBI if they chose to implicate him. As a result, DeCamp turned to the press, releasing a memo that publicly named many of those mentioned in the videotaped testimony. The shockwaves of this memo reached throughout newspapers and television networks in Nebraska and neighboring states. A blurb was even written in Newsweek magazine. Omaha reporters and officials were quick to discredit DeCamp. The Lincoln Journal and World Herald only printed excerpts, stripping the names of those implicated. DeCamp and others posited that the editorial decisions were influenced by Peter Citrone and Harold Anderson. Citrone was a prominent newspaper columnist who wrote for the World Herald, and Anderson was the former publisher of the World Herald. Both were implicated in the child abuse allegations. On March 1st, 1990, the FBI debriefed Danny King, who began to recant what he told Caradori on videotape. They conducted multiple-hour debriefings, and his story remained unchanged until March 5th. He claimed to have lied about the interstate flights, but he reiterated the abuse by Bear and King. Danny King blamed Troy Boner for the fabricated stories. He claimed that Troy was looking to sue King for millions, and the orchestration of the testimony was meant to ensure their victory in the judicial system. By the end of March, Danny had recanted almost all of his testimony, including the repeated abuses of Bear and King. The FBI followed by debriefing Troy Boner, who recanted much of his testimony as well. The DeCamp memo, the leaked videotaped testimony, and the recantation of Danny and Troy greatly wounded the investigation. DeCamp, Schmidt, and Caradori believed the FBI had coerced the recantations. Caradori met with Paul Bonacci on May 10, 1990, after getting his name from a member of the Concerned Parents Organization. Bonacci was in the Lincoln Correctional Center for 2 charges of sexual assault on a child. The victims were 13 and 9 years old. Bonacci was evaluated by a court-appointed psychiatrist and diagnosed with what was formerly known as multiple personality disorder, but what is now known as dissociative identity disorder. The disorder, while controversial in diagnostics, often presents in disorganized victims who suffer repeated and severe abuse as a child. Bonacci was born in Omaha, the second youngest of 6. He came from a broken home with a second and then third stepfather. He suffered neglect, and a predatory neighbor began abusing him at the age of 6. When he was 9 or 10, Bonacci became involved with drugs and sex work, loitering in a nearby park frequented by pedophiles. This quickly matured into parties where he encountered and embraced Satanism and large-scale exploitation. In the first 7 hours of videotaped interview, Bonacci confirmed he met Owen, Danny, and Troy in late 1983 at the Twin Towers apartments. He had already been abused by Citrone, Bear, and King. He described meeting Citrone at an amusement park, where he was solicited, and he described meeting Bear in 1979 in the Milk Run neighborhood. Bonacci was just 12 years old when he was abused by Bear and paid $20. He remembered that the encounters frequently included sadistic abuse, like beatings, cuttings, and burnings. Bonacci claims that his affiliation went on to include cross-country flights to California, D.C., and Des Moines, the same locations cited by the other witnesses. In one particularly brutal recounting, Bonacci claims a camera crew followed them to a remote area outside Sacramento. One of the boys was placed in a cage, and the other 2 were instructed to beat and abuse him. A particularly sadistic man joined the assault before shooting one of the boys with a handgun. The other 2 were instructed to continue their abuse afterwards. That night, Bonacci would unsuccessfully attempt suicide in the hotel bathroom, resulting in a 2-day stay in a California hospital. Bonacci confessed that he participated in the abduction of 12-year-old Johnny Gosch in Des Moines. It was the early morning of September 6, 1982, when Gosch vanished without a trace. The only remnants of his presence were a wagon with undelivered newspapers and his dog, left to wander the street alone. The search was immediate and widespread. Flyers were plastered on every surface, and the police were inundated with tips, entrenched in a case that defied explanation. The search quickly went cold. Months turned into years, and then in 1984, Johnny Gosch was one of the first missing children portrayed on a milk carton. This was an initiative to spark interest, drive public engagement, and unearth leads that might otherwise be lost. Bonacci recounted that men had forced him to kidnap Gosch. They threatened him with a pistol and instructed him to speak with the boy on the street long enough for one of the men to grab him. These men took Bonacci, Gosch, and another boy to a home near Omaha where their abuses were filmed. It was Bonacci's testimony that began to provide reason for the trips to Washington, D.C. He implied that King used children to blackmail politicians and other power brokers. The home in the area had been outfitted with security cameras to capture the illegal sexual activity. These tapes would be sold to other players to twist votes and force political capitulation. Bonacci claims that he was interviewed by the Omaha Police Department on several occasions. He even provided documentation of aggressors, including photographic evidence. However, nothing came from these investigations. Bonacci and Owen suggested that Caradori pursue Rusty Nelson, who likely had a surplus of photographic negatives. They could secure physical evidence of their testimony. On July 9, 1990, Caradori flew a 1984 single-engine Piper Saratoga from Lincoln to Chicago with his 8-year-old son. They were going to attend the MLB All-Star Game. Caradori told his wife that he would be meeting Rusty Nelson while in Chicago. Caradori made 4 phone calls while there, speaking with Lauren Schmidt, his wife, and 2 others. In one phone call, he stated that he would be acquiring photographs and other materials that would corroborate the testimony from his remaining 2 victims. Rusty Nelson would later confirm that he met with Caradori in Chicago and provided him with photographic negatives that would be the linchpin in the Franklin case. The All-Star Game ended around 11:45 p.m., and the Caradoris departed Chicago's Midway Airport at 1:51 a.m. An hour later, the plane crashed in a cornfield in Ashton, Illinois. Debris was scattered up to 1,800 feet from the fuselage, and an investigation determined that the plane had broken up mid-flight. 2 years later, it would be speculated that Caradori may have become overtaken by fatigue. When attempting to desperately recover lost altitude, he had snapped the wings off the plane. The backpack and film camera of Caradori's son were recovered nearly undamaged, yet Caradori's briefcase was not. Those close to the case believe that if Caradori had retrieved photographs, they would have been stored inside this briefcase. The following day, FBI agents, armed with a subpoena, arrived at Caradori's office, requiring the surrender of all evidence related to the Franklin case, as well as any phone logs and financial documents related to Caradori's investigations. Senator Schmidt feared that Caradori's death was one more example of corruption and cover-up. The committee hired former CIA Director William Colby to investigate the plane crash. During his tenure with the CIA, Colby notably devoted outsized resources to Operation Phoenix, which sought to disrupt the political and social support system of the Viet Cong by infiltration, assassination, torture, and more. The program resulted in over 25,000 deaths, many of whom were civilian non-combatants. Colby later became outspoken about the CIA's practices, and he received tremendous political and social pressure to keep his secrets. Colby, familiar with the pressures of political conspiracy, warned DeCamp and Schmidt about the forces at play. Colby investigated Caradori's plane crash and could not find evidence to indicate tampering with the plane. However, it's rumored that he told 3 members of the Franklin Committee that he believed Caradori had been assassinated. Mysteriously, Colby would take a solo canoe trip near his Maryland home in 1996, and he would go missing, only to be recovered 9 days later. There were no witnesses, and the scene was not thoroughly investigated, as authorities believed it was a stroke or accidental drowning. His life jacket was missing from his shed, but it was not recovered with his belongings. The purpose of the Douglas County Grand Jury was to judicially review the Franklin-related child abuse allegations. The grand jury proceedings would be private, and they would make decisions on who to indict to stand trial as criminal defendants. The prosecutor began by calling witnesses, reviewing testimony, and sharing evidence with a jury of Nebraskan citizens. They began by reviewing the earlier allegations of the adopted Webb children, and they released an interim report that would be used to indict Jarrett Webb on third-degree sexual assault charges against his adopted daughter, Lisa. This interim report was released to ensure charges could be filed before the statute of limitations expired the possibility. The grand jury spent the majority of their time reviewing Caradori's videotaped interviews. The witnesses themselves appeared before the grand jury, and Danny and Troy upheld their recantations. Their testimony was meant to discredit Owen and Bonacci. Troy claimed that Owen had called him and fed him the information contained in his 7-hour taped interview, and Danny echoed these claims during his short time on the stand. Owen spent 2 days testifying, and she was questioned about her history of psychiatric hospitalizations, drug use, financial fraud, and more. Bonacci testified, but his history of sexual offenses and psychiatric diagnosis greatly damaged his credibility. The Douglas County Grand Jury released its final report on July 23, 1990, less than 2 weeks after Caradori's death. The subsequent publication of the World Herald read, "Grand jury says abuse stories were a carefully crafted hoax." The report claimed that child abuse allegations related to King were nothing more than rumor. It claimed to have found no evidence of any children being transported on interstate flights, despite passenger manifests and pilot interviews missing from admitted evidence. The report concluded that Lawrence King had used money to solicit and procure men in their late teens and early 20s, which was considered adult pandering. King was not prosecuted because of the pending federal financial case that would result in his conviction. Instead, the jury indicted Alicia Owen on 8 counts of perjury, Paul Bonacci on 3 counts of perjury, and Alan Baer for 2 counts of adult pandering. In 1991, King was convicted of embezzling over $39 million from the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union. The court found him guilty of making fraudulent financial transactions and misappropriating funds, which led to the credit union's insolvency and subsequent federal takeover. King was sentenced to 15 years in prison, a judgment that aimed to hold him accountable for the financial damages his actions caused. In addition to his prison sentence, King was ordered to make restitution, although the prospect of recovering the embezzled funds was considered slim due to the scale of his theft and his depleted resources. The aftermath of the Franklin Committee's investigation and grand jury trial were as multifaceted and complex as the case itself. King's conviction brought a sense of legal resolution to the financial aspect, but left many in the community still grappling with the unresolved allegations of child abuse and exploitation. Some believed that justice had been done. They believed that the allegations of child abuse had come from compromised witnesses, the testimonies of children who had suffered difficult lives by any measure, compounded by drug use, sexual abuse, and more. They believed that these children had suffered greatly, but they had ultimately been confused or coached by investigators and social workers. Satanic panic was at its peak in the 1980s and 1990s. It was a period of heightened fear about demonic ritual abuse, and it had become public hysteria. In short, they believed that the stories were too salacious and sensational to be true. Others found the testimony of the videotaped witnesses to be compelling. They pointed to historical precedents for cover-up, indicating that those in positions of power wielded undue influence to dismiss and discredit witnesses. They believed that law enforcement had been deliberately inept, and the system had not only failed to find justice, but actually contributed to the harm of the outspoken victims. In 1994, a British television company known as Yorkshire Television produced a documentary titled Conspiracy of Silence. The documentary was developed in cooperation with the Discovery Channel. It sought to publicize and explore the allegations of child abuse and exploitation surrounding the Franklin scandal. It was scheduled to air on Discovery, and the event was printed in the TV Guide for its debut time slot. At the last minute, the Discovery Channel unexpectedly pulled the documentary from the broadcast schedule shortly before its airing. While the official reason was not named, it's believed that legal and political pressures were responsible. The suppression of the documentary is one more talking point for those who believe the Franklin scandal was the result of a widespread cover-up. Additionally, there are 15 suspicious deaths connected to Franklin. Bill Baker was a restaurant owner in Omaha. Baker knew King and was a partner in his pornography operations. He was found shot in the back of the head. Sean Boner was the brother of Troy Boner. In 1991, Sean was just 20 years old when he was found with an accidental gunshot wound to the head. Investigators told reporters that Sean had fired the weapon himself. He was found slumped on the couch. Sheriff Pat Thomas claimed that it appeared Sean had been drinking and must have believed the gun was empty at the time. Aaron Owen, brother of Alicia Owen, was found hanging from a ventilator by a prison-issued bedsheet in 1990. He was serving a 4 to 7 year term for several charges, and he died in his cell just hours before one of Alicia Owen's court dates. Claire Howard was Alan Baer's former secretary. She had access to his schedule and personal information, revealing his attendance of King's parties and prior relationships with underage boys. She mysteriously died in her sleep in 1991. Several of King's former associates perished under suspicious circumstances. Dan Ryan was found suffocated in his vehicle. Charlie Rogers was shot with a shotgun, which was ruled a suicide. Joe Malek was found with a gunshot wound, which was also ruled a suicide. Curtis Tucker was thrown
Go to the bathroom, here, B.
Okay.
What is good, Yodi family? Damian Luck back with another banger. I am the original Fulcrum. Fulcrum, come in. Yeah. Yo, King, you feel me? And you best believe it, today we are back here with another banger, you feel me? I'm at a classic Yodiland location. I got a bag full of Benjamins to give away to the Yodi family, you feel me? And it's just a beautiful day outside today, Yodi family. I hope you guys are having an excellent day as well too. Hopefully you guys are doing positive and productive activities, you feel me? But yeah, Yodi family, before we go any further, make sure you guys drop a like on this video, comment down below, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, follow me on all my social medias at the top, turn on the post notifications if you haven't turned them on already yet either.
This video is sponsored by none other than Paradox. Oh yes, it's happening. Throughout thousands of years of our history, we built our cities organically, corresponding to our needs and daily lives. Streets were narrow at human scale, buildings were close together. Most things were within walking distance, which was a necessity for obvious reasons. But then came the 20th century, and with it, mass motorization. All of a sudden, things didn't need to be as close as before. Why have everything within walking distance when you can also drive? From the first half of the 20th century onward, we abandoned our traditional dense, human-centric way of building cities, that is, by the people, for the people, and started designing everything around the car. Part of this was a natural development. With cars, people are more mobile, meaning not everything has to be fitted within walking distance. The other side of this story was a massive, unrelenting lobbying and propaganda campaign by the auto industry. Today, it's almost unthinkable that streets and roads used to belong to the people. You could just walk out of a building onto the road and your life wouldn't be in danger. Nobody would honk at you, nobody would call the police on you, and so on. Worst case scenario, you had to dodge the occasional horse cart or tram. But this millennia-old tradition of public space belonging to the people all but evaporated in the span of a few decades, all thanks to the auto industry. When the number of cars started increasing, so did the number of fatalities. People still assumed that streets and roads belonged to them, so tens of thousands would die getting run over by cars speeding across the city. There were attempts at limiting car traffic and engine speeds, but virtually all efforts were promptly sabotaged by the auto industry. People and cars were at an impasse, but people weren't about to give up on their public spaces that belonged to them for millennia. This was when the auto industry played the ace up their sleeve in a masterstroke of manipulation. They started financing and organizing traffic safety education for children, where they learned, among other things, to always look both ways before crossing, because roads belong to cars, not people. Entire generations grew up with this mantra, ingraining the idea into everyone that public spaces should be surrendered to the auto industry's four-wheeled products. Car manufacturers also helped twist public discourse via propaganda by popularizing expressions like jaywalking. Back then, jay was kind of an insult along the lines of an oblivious dummy. A jaywalker then became a person who used the roads as we always have, for millennia. It was a way to shame people into accepting the dominance of the automobile inside our cities. And, unfortunately, it worked. Though back then, today's colossal traffic jams didn't exist, so the scale of the problem wasn't clear yet. People didn't yet know about induced demand. Nobody knew how catastrophic the consequences of over-motorization would be. The auto industry's investment into propaganda and sabotaging referendums paid them unbelievable dividends. It resulted in a world where our entire civilization revolves around their product, where governments mandate that every project, every building, every renovation, every family home should have space for their product. Is this a great business arrangement or what? In urban planning, car-centrism brought about a tectonic shift in how we plan and design our cities. Instead of the human-scale streets and roads, everything is huge, wide, and out of proportions. Freeways and road arteries cut through the urban fabric. Valuable land has to be wasted on parking lots and garages to store auto industry products. Instead of compact, walkable neighborhoods, everything is far apart, so walking isn't an option. And today I'd like to talk about the worst example of this modern era sprawl: the satellite mall. It's a large commercial area at the edge of town with malls and big box stores next to a highway surrounded by enormous parking lots. I'm building this example of a satellite mall in Cities Skylines, the city builder game, which is going to be free to play on Steam between the 18th and 22nd of May. As you might have heard, Cities Skylines 2 is coming this year, so this free to play might be a good opportunity to get into the city builder genre. Once you try out the vanilla version, definitely check out the list of basic mods, which at this point comprise an integral part of the game. So these satellite malls are home to big box stores and edge of town shopping complexes. They're near the highway and usually situated far enough from the city to be a pain in the ass to get to by anything other than a car. And this is a problem. Now I planned on getting out there and recording some footage of satellite malls. After all, they aren't exclusive to America. Unfortunately, there's plenty of them in Europe too. But my hometown, Leipzig, doesn't seem to have a proper satellite mall. There's the Paunsdorf Center, but it's right next to an S-Bahn station, plus there are tram and bus lines leading directly to it. It's far from optimal, but I wanted to go further. I wanted a stronger
What's that
example. The rule instead of the
No, I
exception.
think he
A
went
proper
downstairs.
satellite mall.
He might be.
The cathedral of consumerism, surrounded by an asphalt
Oh,
desert.
downstairs
Built for
now?
a sweaty boomer climbing out of his oversized
I heard him
BMW
talking
X8 SUV to go sit in a kitschy Fox German restaurant for an hour and complain about having to see black people at the bus stop every morning during their car commute. Around them a sea of furious Karens, overprotective parents with
There's no
screaming,
evidence
idiot
to
children,
confirm
underpaid
or
for
deny
menial
these
workers,
allegations.
bored pensioners, and everyone's weird cousin wearing their gas station sunglasses indoors. The air is heavy with the smell of fast food, cheap perfume, and recent divorces. Okay, let's not get too poetic. You get the picture. To show you a proper satellite mall, I left the cycling haven of Leipzig and headed down to Boomer Town, the so-called city of the modern, Chemnitz. Chemnitz is a case study of satellite malls and why they're a horrible idea. At the edges of the city there is Alt Chemnitz Center, Vita Center, Nefe Park, and the worst one, Chemnitz Center. And that's the one we're about to check out. Right off the bat, there is no convenient way to get there. There is a bus line, and that's fair enough, but for a commercial area of this size, you would need a tram at the very least. If cars can get this much infrastructure subsidized by taxpayers, a tram really isn't much to ask for, and the city will actually put a tram through here sometime within the next 10 years. Almost half a century
not
after
sleeping.
the highway
You
was
sleeping?
built. And priorities, I guess.
No.
But according to Google Maps, there is actually a way to get to Chemnitz Center by train, so I did that with my bike in.
Josh replies to everything. He just hears.
I hear words. And I think they might be for me.
Justin hears words.
So,
You
the
didn't go to
trip
the
ended up really
Bagel
nice.
store stuff? What? You didn't go to the bagel store? I called them
Though
like
the closer
twice.
I got
and
to
they didn't
Chemnitz
pick up,
Center, the
but
clearer
I
it
figured
became
they
that
were
I'm the
closed.
only idiot who showed up
Yeah.
here with a bike. If you go to a satellite mall, you'll do so by car. Period. Why wouldn't you? Everything here was built to service your car-centric lifestyle. I couldn't even find a bike rack, so I had to improvise. If you look at a map, you can see how much space is dedicated to cars, leaving everyone else hanging. This enormous car capacity does nothing but induce demand. People tend to choose convenience and comfort even when it's objectively harmful to their health, to others
Did
around
I?
them, or
No.
to the environment.
Why not?
So the family who would have normally taken
Okay,
the bus
well,
to
go to
Chemnitz
the bagel
Center
store,
will say,
so
oh,
I
let's
just
go by
went to
car
Weis,
instead because it's
and then
faster and more comfortable.
got
There is
food.
more than enough parking space and road capacity. Multiply this by 1,000 and you get dangerous
Yes.
streets, air pollution, and constant noise. This includes
I'm gonna
you as
get
well,
that,
Alex explained.
some
I get that
lemonade,
you prefer
and then
driving, but
lemonade
you should
tea,
also
but
think of the
whatever.
consequences
Okay,
your
yeah.
lifestyle
Fruit.
choice has on others.
Okay.
So this is problem number one of satellite malls. Due to their enormous parking and road capacities, they induce
You want
massive
to go to
amounts of
this one?
demand. And those cars don't just
Doesn't
come
matter.
from the highway, meaning city roads leading to the satellite mall will also become congested, making large swaths of the city borderline unlivable. And to demonstrate this, on my way back to Leipzig, I biked back to the station along the road. And, well, it was quite the experience.
Let's go. Stay.
Joey and Aaron this morning when they go to bed. Everybody. I think John, were you on when Joey and Aaron?
I was, yeah. But I got off right
You were?
away.
I really hate these satellite malls.
Yeah.
How unreachable
Oh, yeah,
they
they were
are, how
on
sanitized
briefly
they are,
while
how they're
I
a
was on
cheap
this
imitation
morning.
of real, lively pedestrian neighborhoods.
Did
And
they
this
go to
ties
sleep
into
then?
the second issue.
Like-
Before leaving, I biked
Maybe.
around Chemnitz a bit and checked out a past prestige project, the Brew Boulevard, a fully pedestrian and bike-friendly
Yeah.
street where private cars are restricted. But compared to the buzz of Chemnitz Center, the Brew Boulevard was almost completely deserted. Satellite malls concentrate huge amounts of commerce outside the city, sucking everything else dry. A city can only sustain so much commercial supply, and satellite malls offer disproportionate amounts of it.
That's
And this
mostly-
oversupply leads to closures and
that one of the
bankruptcies.
store?
Though with the Brew Boulevard, the problem goes deeper. Namely that the boulevard itself doesn't lead anywhere, and it's not on a natural biking or pedestrian axis. It's just
When are you
wedged
trying to
between
go?
two busy roads, and you have to make an active
Whatever you
effort to
want.
seek it out if you want to get there. But the
it's not
Brew
what I
Boulevard
want.
is not
I
the only
did my
problem
stuff
spot.
today,
Even
so
other
you
satellite
drive.
malls are suffering, such as the Beta Center. There, the
It's just
management
been
is
making
trying to
you
get a
drive the
trampoline
last,
hall
like,
set up
4
inside
times.
to somehow fill all the
We're
abandoned
not even-
commercial space. And
Doesn't
this is the
even count
tragedy of
for
the
your-
satellite
your
mall. To a city
car
leadership,
thing.
they might look appealing as
No,
far as
it
tax
doesn't.
revenue goes, but what the shiny
I stopped
brochures are
counting that
silent
one at
about
5,
is all the
and
collateral
that was
damage
in
they will inevitably
February, though,
cause.
so-
Now, Adam, you might say, I agree with what you say, and I do agree that you're a living
Okay.
god
Well,
among
but
humans
come on,
who's
so-
qualified to single-handedly solve every urban planning issue on the planet.
I'm guessing you're gonna take a nap.
But what if someone needs to go to the
No,
hardware
just
store or
laying
the
here chilling
furniture
for a bit.
store to make a big purchase? In those situations, you need a car, as you won't
Might
take
be a
home
little
100
late for a nap
kilograms of
now.
building materials or furniture by bus. And that's a fair point. I'm not advocating for a complete ban of cars. Obviously, there are many situations where cars are extremely practical or even the only viable option, like in some parts of the countryside. What I oppose is the disproportionate use of and dependence on cars. What I want is to cut back on unnecessary trips. If I only go to a satellite mall to buy some socks and a pair of jeans and maybe eat lunch, I don't have to drag 2 tons of metal and plastic with me, even though I could. But while one car isn't a problem, if I'm doing it, 2,000 other people are also doing it, which is a problem. My right to comfort and convenience should not override other people's rights to safe streets, fresh air, and quiet neighborhoods. Though these days this seems to be the case, unfortunately. But I'm happy to say there is a good solution already, superior to the current car-centric state of affairs. There is a way to arrange the aforementioned stores in a non-car-centric way. In Mannheim, where I used to live, there is a Bauhaus hardware store right in the center, easily accessible on foot, by bike, or by public transit. When I had to repaint my apartment before moving out, I just showed up by tram, got a bucket of paint and some brushes, and took the tram back home. If I want to make a larger purchase, I can always go there, pick out what I need, and then have everything delivered from a depot. Better to have one delivery van make 20 deliveries in one trip than 20 people all driving to the store one by one and back. IKEA is also experimenting with new, better store formats. Instead of the usual big metal box by
I don't
the
know. I don't
highway,
know if
they've
you-
launched a
if
new
John's
5-floor
seen
store in
different,
Vienna
but
with no
so far all the
car
reviews of people
based on the
like,
delivery
on
method I've described
Reddit
earlier.
or
If you want
saying
something
that they-
big, you can
it's
pick
a
it
great
out and it
DLC.
will get delivered to you. Stores like the
Yeah, I
Mannheim
saw-
Baumarkt
I
and the
saw
Vienna
a
IKEA
couple of
became
shitty
integral
ones,
parts of
but
the
they might
city,
just
living in
contrary.
symbiosis with other businesses. If I
The
go
only
to the
shitty ones I saw
IKEA,
were like,
I might
oh, I
also
couldn't
check
play
out some
day
of the
one.
local
This
businesses
isn't worth
and the
my money.
restaurant. Contrast
Blah,
this
blah,
with the
blah,
satellite
blah, blah.
mall,
Okay,
where
you
you're
couldn't
locked
play
inside
that
a retail
game,
compound
cry
in the
about
edge of
it.
town, far away from local businesses.
Viewers,
Stores
viewers,
integrated into the
they
city
pitched
support
out
and
some
complement
stuff.
other businesses and vice versa,
Well,
instead of leeching off the center like a tumor like satellite malls do.
So
They
I
also
know-
cut back on unnecessary car
So if you do
traffic,
this
not
one
because
day,
cars
you know,
are
there's
bad,
so many, how
but
many
because
games
you
you
no
couldn't
longer
play
need
for
them to do
months
your business.
after they
And cars are all
released.
well and good, symbols of
Battlefield.
freedom and so on, until you have to pay insurance,
People said
servicing,
about
and
one
gas.
Cyberpunk.
And if cars are the only option in your city, you don't have
I
freedom.
mean, I would have been
You have
pissed,
mandatory
too.
microtransactions
even-
forced on
There-
you by the
the
auto
people
and oil
going on about,
industry.
"Oh, they
It's
don't
time for us
deserve
to
the
stop
bad
thinking in
reviews," just like
satellite
that. No,
malls
they
and
100%
integrate all that
deserve
commercial
bad
power
reviews
into
when
our
they
cities
came to
instead. We'll get livelier city centers,
Yeah, I
healthy
agree
local
on that.
businesses, and
I came into
calmer,
it
quieter
expecting it not
streets
to look
that are
this
safe
way.
even
I
for
know.
children and the elderly to get around on their own. Thank you for watching,
There's
and
just low
Jesus Christ, I
expectations
almost
because
died
of
on my
the-
way
Yeah,
back to the
but
station.
that
Seriously.
shouldn't be the
Anyway,
norm.
thank you
We
for
had,
watching,
like,
and do check out my
Battlefield that
Patreon
didn't
if you
work
wish to
for like
support
a
me making
month
more
when we
content
bought
like
it.
this.
We
And
did,
I'll be
like,
seeing
all
you
those
next
games
time.
that just don't work for months. Like a one day on any game, I'll forgive, but like months, like that's insane. Like all those games, man. There's so many that come out that just don't work. Missing content for months. That's where I go. It's unexcusable. That's like I don't even like want to buy that like space exploring game anymore. Even if it is good now, like it wasn't what was promised when it came out. They lied and it was unplayable, and I don't like.
What about Destiny 2?
Destiny 2 was it wasn't unplayable, but it was rough for the first day. But it was only one day, so I'm fine with it.
Wait, that space game where a lot of stuff was promised about multiplayer and interaction, and then it really... Hold on, it sounds like Destiny 1 to me.
Whoa, what did they promise about multiplayer interaction?
seamless jump in and out of other players' games.
Yeah, it is seamless.
Mm-hmm.
Seamlessly
people over it.
uncontrollable. It would just jump you out of like each other's lobbies constantly.
When?
It did that all the time.
When did Destiny 1 do that to us? Did it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would like go from one zone to the other, and it wouldn't take wouldn't take your friends sometimes. Like you guys would get dropped.
Oh no. Is this one of those things where Jared is intentionally, like, he's blotted it out? Like, the why didn't anyone warn me question? Is this that again?
Bungie
Oh, no.
went back in his brain and retconned it. It just deleted it.
Yeah, I don't remember any of that. It must have been like early Destiny.
That was, Justin, that was the Destiny content that Bungie sunset. That was some of that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious what this prepared. There was like on the quest. Oh, where did the quest go? The final shade. Oh, okay. It was like a preparedness thing. It was the last step you were allowed to do, and it was like, how many ghosts have you collected? How many points have you contributed to the total point? And there was like a total score. At first, I was like, oh, that's weird. It doesn't say anything about why. And then, like in the raid, I was very curious. I was like, yo, I wonder if like the more score we have, like the stronger we are in the raid. So it forces it to take a while. Like you can't just hop in right away and like beat the raid or something. But I don't think the score did anything. I think it was just a number on the screen. I feel like that would have been a cool mechanic.
Hi, everybody.
If you had to
So
get
I
like
hiked up this big
if
hill in
enough
Griffith
players
Park,
started beating like the first
around
encounter, it
sunset
made the
time,
second encounter
right
slightly
in front of
easier.
us.
And then
all the way
if
in the
enough players
back
beat the
is the
second
west
encounter,
side
made
of
the third
LA,
encounter
and the
slightly or
Pacific
something like that.
Ocean is on the
Maybe
horizon.
you look just like slightly stronger or something.
The Hollywood sign is right behind that hill. To the left of us, there's going to be Mount Hollywood right up there. This is the hiking trail I'm walking up. To the left is a view of the city of Glendale. Right there. So now we're almost at the top, and here's a view of downtown Los Angeles from the top of Mount Hollywood, almost the top. That's the top of Mount Hollywood right there.
17.
I decided to stop here because there's quite a few people up there. There's downtown LA in the distance. And then there's the 5 freeway right there. And I'm gonna pan over to the right so you can see the observatory right there in front of us. And that down there is the Greek Theater. It's a open top music venue where they have concerts. I believe it seats around 5,000 people. So, not the biggest of concert venues, but it's here inside Griffith Park. Right there. And it looks pretty crowded, so there might be a concert tonight, but I'm not sure. So if we go to this side of the hill, we see the Hollywood sign right there. Right on that hill. It's dark, so you can barely see it. Right where the radio tower is. Right below it, the little white dot is the Hollywood sign. And we just came from that side over there, from where you can see downtown LA and the Greek Theater. And to the left, if we look all the way down, that's going to be the Port of LA, but that's about 40 miles away or 30 miles away at least.
So we have the shitposter supreme here. I just want to tell you that there's 3 videos I always return to from your incredibly expansive library of content. The first one, for some reason, is the Macedonian the Macedonian insult by the Greeks. The Greek guy is just yelling.
Classic.
That's the
Classic one.
It's the how to achieve communism in 5 steps with Pol Pot.
Pol Pot.
and specifically,
Amazing character study.
yeah, and
I've got to
specifically,
revisit him one day.
yeah, you really need to, and highlight the part where he killed people who speak French. I think that's the only Pol Pot. Pol Pot. I'm kidding.
Damn right.
And the third thing, and this is my absolute favorite, the Mocher series. I don't know what it is about night shifts and the Mocher series, but for some reason, at like 3 a.m, after in my 5-minute break, when I'm trying to just get something quick to eat before I have to get back on the floor, I always watch them just back to back. I don't know why. Maybe I think YouTube has realized I watch it so often that at this particular hour, it's like, all right, let's feed him this. Let's feed him the slot that he likes. But yeah.
Feel honored.
I'm expecting a new edition. Anyways.
I'll definitely expect a new edition this fucking month. I'm
Oh.
working on it right now. It's my most detailed video I've ever made.
Nice. I love how I always imagine what is. I'm not gonna spoil the guest name yet before the official introduction, but I always wonder what is this guy like? What is,
They don't know who I am yet.
The title,
have
nobody
a-
looked at it.
not a recognizable voice at all, right? Even I'm sure we have 5% of our listenership that are normal people that have nothing to do with online culture that might actually be surprised, but everybody else probably will not. But yeah, I always wonder what is this guy like? I always wonder. And then the last video he made, which is how to roll a SIG, a new method, 2024, I think, and just the state of the apartment, you guys, the shit that you're doing. I literally, for the first time on the internet, I had the oh my god, literally me moment. This guy is literally me moment. That was me throughout fucking college and 1-2 years afterwards. I swear to God, some of the best years of my fucking life, man. If you ever want to visit my 7th world Balkan country, please welcome. I'm sure you will fit in perfectly with my degenerate friends because that's exactly who they are. I'm not calling you degenerate. I apologize, but you get what I'm saying. But now, completely unrelated to our guest, I have a story that I genuinely wanted to share. A day before my 5-day sickness started that had me incapacitated as shit, I went to this bar I usually hit up. Mind you, back then dry as shit because of this dry January thing I was doing. Now, I was just hanging out with a couple of dudes. Pints, laughter, all the usual shit. And a woman comes in. She sits next to us. She's pretty tipsy. She interjects her conversation very rudely, I might add. It was very awkward. I guess this is what women feel like when dudes jump on their backs when they just wanna, see their friends. Anyways, she jumps in and says, quote, "You guys will never guess where I'm from." To which we now reply, obviously spiked with interest, at least give us a continent or something. She says, she's a white-looking lady, right? She says...
Ew, Albanian.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, I would have smelled that immediately. Jesus Christ. I would have I can just visually skull measure an Albanian immediately. I'm kidding. I'm not. Everybody can. Okay, I'm not going into this. So, but no, we start guessing countries, and she goes, and I'm not fucking with you. She says we're not these types of Asians, as she goes on and does the slint eye fucking thing with her fingers on her eyes.
Oh my god.
She pulls them back and stuff. We're all just fucking weirded out, but I'm thinking, okay, this is some super.
She's just a Wow Mao viewer. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. Because I'm sitting there thinking that this is some super white-looking Asian woman doing a sketch on us. So, to see what the white boys are going to react with or whatever. So, we ask if she's from a very diverse country or a colonized country at some point, maybe there's white people there and shit. To which she replies, yeah, we are very diverse. We are also surrounded by barbarian countries. And I'm like, okay, this is getting weirder.
Hungary.
Weird. that was good. She really wanted, that tip to go through our thick barbaric skulls, I guess. Anyways, at one point, all three of us give up, thinking, who can this racist country that's hated by their neighbors in Asia be? And the chick looks at us straight in the eye. And you know what she says? She says, Israel.
Okay.
Fucking everything starts to make sense. The racism thing, the barbarians surrounding us comment, just the whole fucking package. And yeah, of course, she lived her whole life in Amsterdam.
Wow.
We found that out later. the
course.
true native patriotism right there. But that was it stuck to me to this day, and I wanted to share it with you boys.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
for that.
She's as Asian as I'm Polynesian. Okay, this is fucking.
She's a native, bro. Her people are from there. It's a birthright.
Of
She's
course,
gotta
yeah.
be from there.
All right, yeah, and
My God,
and
all Israelis are half Asian.
Yeah.
exactly right. And Ireland has like 92% Mesopotamian admixture, so technically,
Look, you're all
Ireland is
just
ours.
ethnic to me, all right?
That is true.
Yeah, but I don't know what was worse. Like, obviously that was worse. But this asshole being a fucking asshole, or like. Half of the people in the bar that were at that point listening to her attentively, I'm talking about, Balkan people in the bar and a bunch of Russians and a bunch of Ukrainians. They did not, none of them made a problem about the Asian racist thing. Everybody made a problem about, nah man, Israel is not in fucking Asia. What the fuck are you talking about? That's the Middle East. And I'm like, what the fuck are all of you now talking about? Where the fuck do you think the Middle East is? Yeah, and that then turned into a whole fucking discussion. Everybody forgot about the racist Israeli chick. I became enemy number one because I said the Middle East is in Asia. So yeah, whatever the fuck.
Hey, we have our own tectonic plate, so technically.
God bless. God bless Israel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Deprogram. Today, we have something truly special prepared for you. We're joined by a living specter of the internet, a floating head not unlike Hakim's, an online trendsetter and trailblazer. He smoked with presidents, drank with Balkanoids, the man who single-handedly perfected the SIG roll. Wow, Mao. Welcome to the show, my friend. Please, for those who might not know your work, share a bit about yourself.
First of all, my God, thank you for that beautiful intro. So, Wow Mao, it's this shitposting behemoth project I've come up with since I was 15 years old, and it's still running strong today. With a lot of projects on the way. I post vlogs from my travels about shitposts, anything to do with politics or countries. I've had leaked NATO documents on my Discord server. I've been on the news. And from that, I don't have any job prospects, so I'm probably going to do this for the rest of my life. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. To me, what's fascinating is that, we've had fucking Harvard professors, we've had these like hardcore organizers, and yet this dude, ladies and gentlemen, might have done more praxis than fucking all of them combined by helping leak some of the most fucking strategic NATO documentation out there. True anti-imperialist action to the front. But okay, let's start with one of your classics. What introduced me specifically to your shit in the first place? I think it was an after in some shit-stained student apartment at like 7 a.m. as a tweaking bro kept trying to, quote, play a really funny video for us as he kept scrolling for 5 minutes after he had YouTube searched the Balkans. Yeah, I'm talking about the cult classic video series Cursed Balkan Comments, which have existed before your popularization of the, let's call it, artistic medium through which you tell a sophisticated anthropological study of the world's most important peninsula, a medium you have greatly popularized. Now, we love doing some race science here on the show from time to time, so let's get you in on it, okay? Rank your top 5 shitposter Balkan countries, and I want to hear academic level argumentation here. Understood?
Oh my god, in terms of shitposting, Serbia's up there. I've known so many Serbians in my lifetime, and they've always impressed me with what they put out, you know. Like, I swear, the whole, like, shit-talking other Balkan countries online, it stems from Serbia, because they just can't let it go. It's been decades since the Serbian Wars, and the only people talking about it are Serbians. That's how we know. This is where it all stems from. They're on top, easily. For number 2, I'd say Albania, just because they're like largely the underdogs. There isn't a lot of Albanians in the world, but we still hear about them.
What the fuck? Like,
It is. Voila.
Okay.
Voila, it is, bro.
all the 60% of Albania who is not Muslim fucking vibrating listening to this. I'm fucking with you. No, please continue. I'm gonna stop interrupting you.
Oh yeah, but what about Kosovo though? 90% Muslim. Kosovo is 90% Muslim.
Yeah, Kosovo. Yeah.
If you dare recognize it, or is that a NATO trap?
Yugopnik will bust out the calipers on you soon if you keep talking about Kosovo. I'm kidding.
In every Yugopnik, there's a hidden Serb Gopnik.
Yeah, exactly right.
I'm kidding.
Oh my God.
So did you start from number 1? You started with Serbia at number 1 or Serbia at number 5?
No, Serbia number 1, man.
Serbia number 1 always.
We'll hit the scene with Serbia. And I'd say Greece and Turkey share the 3rd spot because they're inseparable. You can't talk about one without the other. And the magnitude of memes each country has put out, you cannot deny that they're up high in the list. And honestly, from there, it's all arbitrary. I don't really know where to rank Croatia or Montenegro or Bosnia. Maybe Bosnia above Croatia, but I don't know how to put that in numbers, you know.
True. I mean, Bosnia has very good, war era shit, but, their content output has really slowed down in the last decade because they seem like they don't really care about any of this shit. So do the Croatians as well, but the Greeks and Turks, together with the geopolitical situation between those two states intensifying, so have the memes started to intensify very greatly. And you are not helping either. I think you restarted half of these fucking hatreds. Not to shit. You wouldn't be able to do it if you didn't find the content online and then just made brilliant videos out of it, right?
No, it's safe to say I'm like a war profiteer who's making money off these conflicts.
That is 100% safe. That would be 100% correct. But what about internationally? I mean, the meme is funny, haha, Balkanoids, haha. But let's do
the funny zone.
Yeah, let's do another tier list. We are definitely catering to iPad kids here, aren't we? What are your top 3 nationalities in general when it comes to their cringe levels online? And no, you cannot do Israel. That would be too easy.
Yeah.
No! Oh man, I gotta rethink my whole list.
This is why we come with the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
If I had to exclude all the Balkans off my top 3, I'm a bit dead in the water. I can't think of any. Maybe, in terms of nationalism, I've seen the things coming from India and Nigeria. The conflicts there between different tribes and ethnic groups. Just the sheer nicheness of it. No one's heard of these fucking jokes in between the Oyo and the Igbo peoples in Nigeria and North India divide. It's completely incomprehensible to anyone living outside those countries. But in them, they're dead serious. I'd love to poke fun at that at some point.
You should definitely talk about. I was shell shocked when the genocide in Gaza started. the amount of Indians flocking online and being like, Israel God, I love you, this is amazing, you the best. That was fucking shell-shocking to me. Like, it was so niche and
It's
so
all out of Islamophobia.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, no, they've been supporting Israel like even before this war started. It was a thing that Indians would support Israel online, and it's all comes from their hatred of Islam.
Big cringe.
Yeah, and it was all the cringe would intensify because like some random Israel Twitter pages would post typical Twitter posting, Israel allies, 2 dots, and then a bunch of those emoji flags of all the countries that support them, and then there would be no India, and this would be like 100,000 likes type of post with like 120,000 comments, and out of those 120,000 comments, 80,000 would be Indians just writing, "Hey Israel, what is India flag? What is India flag? What about India?" Or just like the Indian flag question mark, Indian flag question mark. That was fucking lit.
It's sad. It's sad. They're really not in this discussion at all, but they want to be so badly.
Have you seen? I remember what's it called when the thing just first popped off in Gaza, the most recent stuff. A lot of Palestinian temporary workers that would get permits to work, they weren't allowed obviously because of the war. And India needs cheap labor. Not India. Israel needs cheap labor because they are settlers. They're not used to working. The government basically announced that they're going to be inviting a certain amount of Indians, like 10 or 20,000 or something, as part-time workers. And all these Indians were writing under, "Oh my gosh, we support Israel." And the amount of racism Israeli show. They're like, "Oh, we have too many brown people already."
Yeah, Jesus
It was like, let's focus on getting all the Palestinians first. Oh, we importing.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's genuinely horrible.
They weren't familiar with
So
their
jarring.
game.
Yeah.
They had no idea Israel was like this.
Exactly.
I'm just shocked that not even in the previous tier list, and now I gave you a second fucking chance to mention them. You did not mention Bulgarians. Like, they are Balkan, and they are in the last 2 years, like, dude, they have dominated everything.
They're silent.
They are the nation behind Skibidi Toilet, man. They are the country that gave us Skibidi
not
Pop Pop
Georgia?
Pop Pop.
That was a Georgia guy, wasn't
No, Skibidi Toot Toot. That's the fucking shot-looking guy.
Are you talking about the song? The actual song. of
Yeah,
it.
the actual song. It
the
always
song is
comes
from-
from the root of the root of the root. The actual song comes from good old Bulgaria. Even Hakeem fucking blew my mind when he shared his top 10
yes,
song,
I know that.
top 10 like artists or whatever the fuck was Spotify list. The
what episode?
end of year rap or whatever.
is it?
And it was
what's
Fiki from Bulgaria, the guy that like
What
I am
activity
very
or
acquainted
whatever.
with because of
Oh,
here.
it's
And
like
this
a
Iraqi
mission I have to
comrade
do.
of mine is
So,
telling me, "No, man, I fucking
as
pop
part of
off
the
to
DLC, like,
Fiki
find,
over in
like,
fucking
those-
Baghdad."
like,
man. I'm like, what the fuck,
it's like
man?
part
This
of the
is
story is, like, the
incredible.
witness, like,
Bulgaria is
started, like,
dominating
destroying
the
ghosts.
international fucking mainstream of every
Under the watch
single
the activity, it's like-
aspect of internet
It's like, oh,
culture
it's
and
like
life.
this
And the
place
Bulgarians
40 people
themselves,
in
they
this,
don't
like,
even
I
know
haven't
it.
even, like-
They hate on Fiki. They should make him fucking
finished
president.
reading.
Fiki for president. That's what I'm
It's
fucking
a-
saying.
3 different
You're not
spots.
wrong,
There's
generally,
like
because,
spoiler. It just like basically tells
I think
you,
if
yeah,
it
you killed
wasn't
the
for
witness.
Fiki, I don't know. What else is Bulgaria really known
Wait,
for?
Bulgarian hate no yet?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry.
I think they made the bacteria for yogurt. That's all I've heard.
Yeah, of
you know.
course, yes. This is very, very.
Bulgaria's
No, and I think they made like the first computer.
Are you
going
gonna wait to beat the raid
big as a
before you do the
house?
12 man?
No, they did not, dude. What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm torn.
No,
I don't
it's
know,
from
because I'd rather it not get spoiled for me. but
Bulgaria has
I
good
don't
food. They
think
have
I'm
nice
gonna beat the
people.
raid anytime soon.
They're like half
So-
Turks, but they don't like to be called that. Including the
They
ethnic
got lots of
Bulgarians.
Turks.
Yeah. No, they have
Yeah.
ethnic Turks who they just kind of
So
try
much,
to
yeah.
sneakily get rid of through deportations and other
Why-
horrific.
I thought we stood a chance at beating it on Sunday.
Which is interesting because you see half of Bulgarians, you're like,
Maybe I
you
will
are
off.
not European. I don't know who told you.
But
I mean, Bulgarians try to do socialism, and their idea of doing socialism is forcing their Muslim Bulgarian minority to change their
Literally-
name from
Yeah, like-
Mohammed to Ivan. Like, we are
People are
doing
now-
class consciousness, guys.
It's like literally like our,
This
like
is
our-
how you pull
our
it
best
off.
Well,
people,
the
like,
one fact I
this
know
kind
about
of people
Bulgarians is that they're the
we can
European
beat things
country
with.
that's shrinking the most.
And,
All Bulgarians
European Union
are
country.
like leaving to Western Europe,
And,
Germany, the UK, coming to work there.
Yeah, a lot of them are now returning. It's a whole
And,
migrational process.
one guy, like, he's like, oh, he's got the recommended
etc.,
back
etc.
room.
But yeah, when the
Someone
country
else
actually entered the
disappeared,
European
and now
Union,
we're
the
down
amount of
that
people
route.
that left
Yeah,
in a
so-
matter of 2 weeks was
We're about to
fucking
attempt to
insane,
do it.
which makes me worry greatly about Serbia, Macedonia,
Well,
Bosnia,
so why are you talking to me about going to the beer
Montenegro, and
store?
so on, because the second
because
these
people are disappearing
countries are
and, like,
potentially
it's not
accepted
good.
into the EU, they're gonna lose like 2 million people in 3 days.
Do you think?
Like,
Do you think they're gonna let Serbia into the
fucking-
EU?
well, if
Travel marker
they
for me
end
is
up
so good. Is it in the
resolving
dungeon? Do I have to go in the dungeon?
question
Is that
of,
why?
Kosovo and so on, then possibly. I mean, but
Yeah.
one can never know if that's
The Kosovo question.
yeah, the Kosovo question. From
I
their
don't want to hear
perspective.
those words from a Serbian.
Hey, who told you I'm Serbian, baby? But yeah, let's step away from controversy for a second.
It says search streaming city, which means I shouldn't have to go
Question,
to
okay? And talk about anti-Semitism. Kanye West-styled anti-Semitism specifically. You seem to have the type of brain wiring to understand what the hell is happening with this dude. I mean, he's just an idiot, right? Or are we missing some meta commentary?
Definitely, there's something going on in Kanye's mind, something bigger that we all can't see. He made graduation. You can't just like dismiss everything he said so far as some sort of crazy bipolar ranting. There's something going on that he knows and we don't.
We all know. Look, there's two conspiracy theories, and we've
I
always,
opened Twitch
this has been a
to
running joke
go
on
over
this
stream
podcast.
before
And it's either
Jared and
the
some
Irish
random
who run the United States,
video.
and behind them are, of
Someone
course,
is
the ever true
hitchhiking.
Albanians
Twitch
who have
plays
their kebapi dipped fingers.
His name is
in every-
Trevor,
in
and
every
he
sector
finally got a ride from
of
someone,
American
and their name
finance.
is Tara.
No, if you had to choose a
Nice.
conspiracy theory,
There you go.
okay, I don't want to.
How's he doing it?
Oh boy.
How's he doing a Twitch
If I had to
hitchhike?
choose one.
If you had to choose a conspiracy,
Streaming
not
something,
about Jewish
Tiger?
people, no, not that,
He streams
but
himself
just in
Tiger.
general,
Okay.
right? And ethnically, and
So he's like trying to go
ethnic-based.
specific places, so at like
conspiracy theory,
intersections
what
and
would you
stuff,
pick?
like highway
You've
intersections.
already ruled
so,
out the Irish conspiracy
people can
theory.
pick.
Oh,
Damn.
that's,
So, like,
look,
for instance,
that's why I
you
tell you,
can't go
hard-hitting
north
questions.
of
I don't
the
want to
one
give you
place, so they pick between
layups.
south and
I
west
want
or something
I want
like
you
that.
to give me the esoteric
I don't
caliper
So he's
measures.
telling the random drivers where to go. As
Really
he's
making me work
going.
my answers.
Exactly.
Well,
No,
there's the
no,
other
no.
ones, the Lebanese.
He has a sign.
Oh.
Have you heard of this?
Oh, tell me.
Almost every politician
Oh,
in
and
South
he's-
America
Which
is
chat is picking
part
which
Lebanese
way.
or fully Lebanese.
And then
Damn. Yeah,
they
so
made the
if they're
title
going
all
that
from
way,
immigrants.
Yeah, but are you surprised?
I mean, the
the,
Titans.
the femboy
Okay,
takeover of Latin America. Oh, God.
apparently he's
I love
done
it.
this. He's
Is
been
there
like
is- this
hitchhiked
is a-
over 2,000
feel free
times
to
or
not answer
something.
This, but I'm assuming there are accents like regional dialects within Tagalog. I'm assuming.
Oh, well, it's not just regional
Yeah, people who like to hitchhike
accents.
are
There's whole
weird.
different
I think that's a
languages
weird
in the
thing to do.
Philippines.
Yeah, of course,
that
of course.
each ethnic group speaks.
Agreed.
Like, I don't know much
Well,
about
this is
Tagalog
what a
because
confined
my family
space with a
doesn't
stranger
speak
that you don't
Tagalog,
know
so
for-
Ibaloy.
I see. All right. Well, my
I'm
question
sure
was:
we're
is there a
out of
femboy version? Sorry for assuming.
And
you
then
said
you just keep
Tagalog.
picking
That was my
multiple
bad.
strangers. So it just makes it
No, it's
worse.
only the femboy version is the Tagalogs. Like they are the most developed ethnic group in the Philippines. They've got all the money, and therefore they've got most of the gay people. For a fact.
The graph gave people money, like call lions directly.
Sure, no. The poorer you are, the less gay you are.
Exactly.
No, actually, the Philippines is a really good case study to look at how gay culture and the gay identity can still exist despite being outside of the West's influence. You know, because a lot of ethnic groups we still have. Even though we're poor and we're cut off from the rest of the world, we still have loads of gay people. Not just gay people, trans people as well. It's so common to see a trans person on the street, more so than here in the UK, from what I've seen. Because, not because it's like religiously accepted, because we still have a lot of people there who are hardliners on what a man and a woman should be. But it's just so common in the culture to be trans.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Is there a historical precedent for it? Like I know there's some cultures that would have concept of dancing boys, and there's some cultures that would have, for example, some island cultures because of general shortage of women. So you'd have men who basically inhibit some sort of intersex role or wife sharing, stuff like that. Is it something like this, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's ideas of third gender all across the third world, but I'd speak specifically for Southeast Asia. We have lots of trans people here. It's so common to be trans in Southeast Asia in general, and I feel like that must have existed for centuries, long before Western interaction.
Very interesting.
Yeah, just look at Thailand.
All right, moving along from femboy discussions and other related fields. You've done quite a bit of traveling. You've experienced a good share of whatever every culture has in degeneracy to present to you, which you've indulged in fully in the style of Yugo, which we're very proud
I look
of.
for it.
Yeah, exactly right.
I seek it out.
Yeah. What are the things that particularly stand out for you?
In terms of degeneracy culture.
No,
Expensive fucking cigarettes. I noticed that there's a direct correlation between Mao liking a place and the cigarettes being cheap. Like he goes to Finland and then he goes to fucking Lithuania, Estonia. They're all the fucking same. And the reason he like Finland and I don't know Estonia look literally the fucking same. But the reason he loves Estonia is he follows it up by just saying, "Man, the cigarettes here are fucking cheap, bro." And
the alcohol, it's the alcohol
as well, yeah.
Much cheaper. Yeah, I mean, if I had to choose between two places that look exactly the same, they have the exact same culture, the exact same language, and one's place has cheaper beer than the other, the other one's winning by a landslide.
Filipinos are Balkan. That's it. Like you have proven it 100%.
You're just trying to get good boy points with Yugo. This is propaganda I'm not going to stand for.
At this point, Ugopnik has also called all of our guests honorary Balkanoids, so welcome to the club.
And no, don't make it less special. No, I haven't.
It's the highest honor.
I mean, the fact that you even got invited to the show, you're a honorary Balkanoid. Plot twist, like Ugopnik is secretly like a hardcore racist, and he only talks to fellow Balkanoids.
Secretly?
But you have to earn the honorary Balkanoid status before you get in on the show. I really like your vlog. So I really want you to continue with what Hakeem asked.
Oh, what did Hakeem ask?
I asked you about your favorite through your travels, searching out degeneracy wherever it may be. And all cultures are beautiful, but every culture has something that is a bit more interesting or askew. That is not the stuff you find in the brochures. You saw this out. You've experienced. You've indulged. I want you to give us the scoop. What are the things that stand out for you? You can make it your favorites. You can just say things that have particularly piqued your interest.
In the Middle East, you will never find like a rude or angry or like a person who would piss you off. Everyone there is so nice. And that's because like religion has them by the fucking balls, right? Allah is watching everything you fucking do. And therefore treat everyone as kind as you can. Yeah. And it really does show. It's always lovely meeting an Arab, you know?
Hey, see that? See that, JT?
What about say something nice about white people?
He's gonna be. We're gonna be here all day, man.
Do you like Texans?
I've never been to America. I only know Americans
you're not missing out.
who dare to escape America. You know.
Yeah. Well, keep it that way for your own sake.
There's obviously something wrong with them already.
Yeah.
Well, here's the sort of thing. Every country, no matter where you are in the world, their neighbors, they have the stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
The Philippines is special because it's so, like, there's a massive collection of islands, but you do have neighbors still. Are there weird, cultural stereotypes that you guys have? You must.
The only stereotypes I know about the Philippines' neighbors, like Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, only stems from like Dota. Because we don't have like... It's not like Europe where we've got like borders that basically mean nothing. You go across a border, it's still the exact same as you went across it, right?
Yeah.
There'll be a bunch of Hungarians in Vienna. There'll be a bunch of Serbians in Sarajevo or whatever.
Yeah.
But in Southeast Asia, I've basically only met Filipinos in the Philippines and Malaysians in Malaysia.
Oh, very interesting.
So, not nationality-wise, ethnically-wise, there's a bunch of like Chinese people and the native populations, the Ayeta people, they're always around. So it's not like it's not diverse. It's just that it's not diverse nationality-wise. So the only stereotypes I know are from fucking video games where we play on the same server. That's when we start to like insult each other and berate each other. The Philippines has the reputation for being poor, which is fair enough. We're the poorest people in the region. Indonesians, they're hardcore Muslims. They're more like superior towards everyone else. The Malaysians, they've got a lot of their own ethnic conflicts within their country, and we can point that out. Singapore, they're all rich, so they got like their heads shoved up their asses. That's basically it.
And Brunei is just in their own little corner.
Oh, dude.
Brunei's like the weird
fuck
kid at
is
the
ever
party.
met a
He's like,
Brunei?
what the fuck? Like,
No, my God, I've never met a Bruneian. They don't leave Brunei.
Yeah, would you leave Brunei? Dude, I looked it up for the memes. I was sitting with my parents in a cafe, and I was like, they were basically telling me like, "What are you doing here? Why don't you go somewhere and make some like proper money? Why are you eating shit in public healthcare?" And I was like, "All right, you know what? For the memes, let's just look it up." And I brought up the national like Ministry of Health website for Brunei, and they're like, "We're looking for," it's in English, and they're like, "We're looking for doctors." And they offer, now listen, they offer, first of all, travel there and back. So you, like, when you go to Brunei, they'll pay for your ticket there. And whenever you want to go home to visit people and whatnot, and the flight back, they pay for it. So it's on the budget of the Ministry of Health. They'll provide you housing. They'll provide you a car. They will pay you, I think, something like $150,000 a year. And it's completely tax-free.
Wow.
And they give you like food allowance and shit. So basically all the major expenses you have in life, the state will cover, and then the rest of your income is tax free. You would live like a fucking king.
Jeez.
MashaAllah.
And I remember I was looking, and my mom was like, "Hey, why did you send that? Like, send the job up." But yeah, I didn't because I have my own interests here at the current time. But maybe in the future. It was that, and by the way, I once got offered on LinkedIn of all places, I got offered a job on an American cruise ship.
Oh
to
my
be
God.
like a onboard physician, yeah. And I remember I read through the Jesus Christ,
Don't do it.
temporary ear
You
rape.
can't call yourself a communist if you work on a cruise ship.
of all places, goddamn.
But listen to this. They're like, you'll be the onboard physician, right? But also, if something were to happen to you, we don't offer health insurance, and they don't recognize other health insurance like schemes or whatever. So they're gonna go and if I manage to still be alive, no matter what happens, by the time they dock back in the United States, then they'll take me to an American hospital where I'll have to basically go $300,000 in debt. It's so stupid as fuck.
Well, you're already a medical practitioner. Just fix yourself on the cruise.
Yeah, exactly right.
What's the problem?
You know what? I can't argue with that logic. I'm going to be like that Russian surgeon, the Soviet surgeon that was in the Arctic or whatever, who had to operate his own appendix. No. Have you ever tried to write your name with like a mirror and how fucked up it happens? How did this dude do surgery? Like mirrored. My God. All right. Here's another question for you. Is there a certain, like, Filipino food is known for being pretty delicious. I would like to, especially cooking is very fun too. But can you tell us about balut or balut?
Oh, balut.
Yeah.
So like every fucking morning at like 7 a.m. we'd have the balut man trying to sell balut to people on the street, and you'd hear,
Can you please explain?
Balut!
Can
Balut!
you please explain balut to
What
these
the
lovely
fuck
gentlemen?
A balut is this national treasure we've got in the Philippines, and it's an absolute delight to taste. It is a duck embryo that is like slightly on its way to becoming a duckling, but stopped right there, boiled. Right, so the embryo is boiled, and so is the fetus. So when you've purchased your balut, you peel open the shell, you eat the embryo around the fetus, and throw it away. And it tastes like hot dog.
But around the
sounds
fetus, but not
awful.
the fetus itself. Why don't you eat the fetus? Why awful? Motherfucker, you eat chicken period every fucking morning, man.
No,
That's
I don't
egg.
eat that either.
Yes,
are
that's
yucky.
egg.
Eggs
That's
are yucky.
egg.
I don't
Oh,
eat
okay,
eggs.
God bless. Okay, you're not a hypocrite. God bless. God bless. Yes, I think we had a conversation about this like 70 episodes ago,
Yeah.
and I forgot that
Yeah.
you are a fellow civilized man. Bravo. No eggs. Do not eat it. Do not eat another
fucking love
animal's
eggs.
period. Literally. So if anybody was disgusted by eating embryo and not disgusted by eating period, then you are an objective hypocrite. But now to all
Well,
of the Filipino
I'm on the
people-
other side of the spectrum then, right? I'm on the other side. I eat embryos and I eat pig.
Yeah, so you're
Exactly,
also
not a hypocrite. Also not a hypocrite. But why not eat the fetus as well? Like fry that motherfucker up, man. It's dead
It's got
already.
like feathers on it. It's already got bones and feathers on it. You know, there's no point. It's a bit gross and slimy as well. So just eat the embryo.
But like there you go. That's the difference between Filipinos and white people. White French people have like taken birds that are already alive and that are very well developed, but they fry them at such intensity. You know, that super bourgeois rich people dish. I don't remember it. That you eat when you cover your face so you don't see it, so that you don't feel so bad for the bird, and then you take it underneath the piece of cloth that you put on top of your head, and then you chew the bird. But the way they barbecue it or fry it or burn it, I don't remember. The very small feathers that it already has on it kind of burn off so that you can eat the whole thing. And the bones are so small because it's so underdeveloped or so tiny to an extent that you can eat it without actually spitting out the bones. So you guys could do the same thing. Just con white people into like a $10,000 dish. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You get to eat your national dish, which is the embryo around it, and instead of throwing out the shit, just feed the actual
Feed it to white people.
Feed it to white tourists,
Yeah.
man. Fucking win-win, man.
I swear to God, this is what we eat, bro. Trust me, you'll be a part of the culture once you do.
There you go.
Right. I'm sorry, JT is a chicken nugget and like fries.
give me a Pop-Tart, give me a bag of candy corn. Nah, I hate all this stuff.
I was just teasing. Putting that aside, there's another dish that I've heard of. I don't know if it's actually served. Actually, there's two dishes I've heard of, but I don't know if they're really served. Tamilok. Is this something you guys actually eat?
I don't recognize the name. Can you describe it?
It's like it's a type of worm, essentially, from what I know, that eats on like the side of ships.
Fuck?
Yeah. It's like a clam. It's not a worm, but it looks like a worm, basically. It's a saltwater clam.
Interesting.
Is this not a thing? Or is,
like
is this too coastal
what, a
for
nematode?
our urban dwelling? Wow,
I'm from the mountains, bro. I'm from the
sorry.
mountains. I don't know anything about the seafood.
I thank the Lord every day that Hakeem has a lot of melanin on his fucking skin. If a white boy just asked the Filipino, yo, bro, do you eat worms, bro? This would have gone in a very different fucking direction, okay? Oh, God.
Right. Look, you may not eat tamilok, but I'm sure you do eat soup number 5. Come
What's
on,
soup number 5?
dude, how do you not know this?
What does it mean?
Okay.
Is this the blood? Is this the Carabao bloods? Because I've eaten that.
No, the blood is that dinaguan or whatever it's called, the dish with the pork broth and blood and all that stuff with the vinegar and the chilies.
Yeah, for bull's testes.
Oh no, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
No, dinaguan
No,
is
I've had that,
dinaguan is like a diced pork. The reason that it's known is because it's so dark because it's the coagulated blood, pork blood that they cook with it along with the chilies. I would never have it because I'm Muslim. I don't eat pork. But it's a very interesting dish because it really looks almost like jet black. Very interesting. But no, soup number 5. This one is a dish I actually didn't know about. I was like, you know what? Let me look up, see if there's something that is probably weird even for like a native Filipino. It's apparently a dish that serves bull's penis and testicles.
Nice.
Together in like kind of a stew.
Yeah, that's the one
That's
I meant.
Spanish.
Yeah, that sounds
okay.
good.
That
actually.
sounds Spanish. Because I've had that in Spain. I've had bull's testicles in Spain.
What I would say
it
is-
was all
Well,
right.
I've had it in Serbia. I've had it in Bosnia as well. Yeah, I've eaten a lot of bull's dicks. It was good. It was good.
But no, I haven't had that in the Philippines.
All right. Well, apparently it is also like a regional dish, but I don't remember which region it is, but they're Filipinos. They're the Philippines Kurds. Because the Kurds are known in our parts at least for eating testicles.
Shit. I could totally see that happening because it sounds like that's something that was brought over by the Spaniards.
Yeah,
that sounds
most
like the
likely.
Spanish
Exactly,
to eat
true.
bull cock. What I have in my province, in my ethnic group, is that we have these Carabao blood soup. So where we boil the blood of a carabao, and these are like big, hardy water buffalo creatures. Very strong, and so when you bite down on their blood, it's gritty. It's gritty with iron and bone, and it nearly made me vomit when I had it last Christmas because it was so. It's nothing like you've ever had before, you know. There's nothing else like it. Gritty blood.
Ooh. Pass. Pass.
Yeah, JT's already on the fucking floor vibrating right now. But okay, moving away from balls and blood and all that good stuff. I'm sure you didn't think you would get away with us not asking about your involvement with the pro-Russian anti-NATO sabotage, Tavarish Vatnik Mao. I am obviously talking about your Discord server's involvement with the unironic leakage of highly secretive U.S. State Department NATO information. I'm just going to leave the story there, and I want you, but actually in detail, I want you to tell us the whole story from your perspective. A true Gen Z Snowden, my brothers and sisters. Please go on.
Before I start my story, I just want to say that I was interviewed by the BBC just a few days ago for one of their podcasts. So it was like a proper productional thing where they had me on call, and this interviewer had to ask me, because, you know, a lot of his audience is like old people who would know nothing about this stuff. He had to ask me what Thug Shakers was. What does that mean? And I was dumb enough to answer him.
No, you shouldn't. What do you mean dumb enough? He needs to be educated.
I was like, okay.
This is gold.
Thug Shakers is this guy who goes into the hood and he meets this guy who he would call a thug, and he asks him to shake it. And what do you mean? What do you mean by shake it? His ass? Is this actually going on the BBC?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's better than the coverage they've been doing of us so far.
True.
So.
Yeah. All right. To start the story from the top, right, from my involvement, the first time I hear about there being leaks on my server, it's already been circulating around on Twitter. So I learned about it from there, and I'm scared as hell. I'm thinking, fuck's sake, my server's really done it now. It's always been a thorn on my side with all the fucking like controversies it's gone into already. Now they've shared private NATO documents. I've got to fucking do something about this. I go on my server, my mods have already wiped everything. It's a clean slate. There's nothing left because we're deathly scared of what's going to happen to the server once Discord finds out. From there on, I get multiple emails from the BBC, from the Times, the Daily Mail, any sort of both legitimate and trashy news organizations you can think of. Even one Russian news organization called
the Macedonian Herald.
If it was the Macedonian Herald, I would have gone on it. But the story is a guy who was a mod on my server was in the original Thug Shaker server where Jack Teixeira posted those leaked documents from where he got it from his job. So my mod takes those documents, posts it on my server to like impress his friends, and that is where like basically everyone found out about it.
What a timeline we live in.
Do any of you know what's in the documents?
Tell us.
Because I do. I never got to look at them myself. I was told what was in them by a Julian Assange associate. One of his underlings working for him. He contacted me asking me if I still got a link to it. And then he told me what was in the documents, which were it was Russian positions and Russian intelligence, basically what the Russians knew. But the thing is, this is an American leak. So what it really says is that the Americans know what the Russians know, which means there's definitely a spy in the Russian higher-ups who knows everything that's going on and is relaying that information. That's why they were so important.
Yeah. And if they know what information is leaked, then it would help them to locate the specific individual that is potentially leaking the information, or if not, to find the specific individual to change particular strategies or whatever the fuck they were doing that has been leaked. You know, you cannot act against leaked information, etc., etc. But all of that coming from your server, I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, waking up to that must have been quite quite an experience. and except for the BBC, did you go to any other shows? BWC maybe? I don't know.
I did one interview for Times Radio that they made into a YouTube video, but most of them were like for articles for their sites. You know, it wasn't that big of a... My story wasn't that big of a story in terms of the grand scheme of things. I was just a guy who was there, who had the server that these fucking leaks blew up on. So I wasn't in the limelight that much.
But are you now doing something to as a proud server owner to protect your server member? I mean, now you have a server member that is in prison probably for the rest of his life. Don't you feel responsible for this? Oh Lord!
He's not in prison. He's not. He's a minor from America. Right. He has already been contacted by a bunch of news organizations, at least his parents have. And he can't be in trouble because he's not the one who leaked those documents. He wasn't the guy who took it out of the military and onto the internet. So there can't be any charges pressed against him, thank God. You know?
Okay, so there you go. Mao actually cares about his server members, and he inquired on what is going on with this beautiful soul that could have been harshly punished by the American military-industrial complex. But, rounding back to what we were talking in the beginning, literally, guy did more praxis while being asleep than half of us, while actively trying to do something against the Imperial machine. But, speaking of Imperial machines, what's the worst flag to have in bio?
I'd say American, right?
Yeah.
Hear me out on this. Like,
No, you're
obviously,
right, but
Ukrainian flags, they always post, like, the shittiest fucking takes you've ever seen in your life. But it's the American flags that always have these takes that are more, like, self-serving, that don't really fit into a specific agenda. They're more selfish from the American perspective. So, yeah, obviously, it's always right-wing, or it's always to do with international political affairs that still serve the American perspective, which is like shitty, honestly. Whenever I fucking see it, I've never seen a take from American flag that doesn't piss me off, left wing or right wing.
Yeah.
This leads into, I think, the meat of today's episode, which is, can you please explain to us in detail what is wrong with Anglos?
That's gonna take entirely too long to answer.
I posted a tweet recently, a nice joke, an obvious nice joke tweet saying, Anglo decolonization will not stop at America or Australia. I say we should take all the Anglos in the UK and send them back to Jutland, right? Where their ancestors are from. And we will give Britain back to the Welsh and call it Prydain, you know? And I had so many fucking quote tweets that are so fucking pissed off at me from an obvious joke. Like, even insulting me being Filipino and shit like that. It's like, you're so fucking sensitive from this?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But I mean, to insult...
I can't wait to send you back.
To insult Anglos is your birthright, honestly. Even more than the Spaniards. I think just because the what do you think about the Spanish, the American intervention within the Philippines? Where they're like, oh, we're saving you guys. Oh, by the way, we're just staying.
I've written a whole paper about this. I've written a whole paper about the American occupation back in high school, so I'm pretty well versed in that. I definitely have more of a grudge to hold against Americans than Spaniards because, well, Spaniards fell off so massively. There's nothing you could get from them now, innit? Like, what reparations can we ask from Spain?
Yeah. You go there, you go to the Angloids and they're still cocky as fuck. You go to the Spanish, you're like, oh, senor, welcome, let's have some fucking drinks, man, life is good, man. Like, you can't fucking hate them. You wanna, motherfuckers raped and pillaged all over the world. But now you go there, they're fucking lovely. You're like, shit, I wanna fucking hate you, but I can't. What the fuck, dude? Sorry for interrupting, but yeah.
And they've got nothing. No.
Yeah.
Like, I've been to Spain, I've been to Barcelona, and they've got nothing left now. They're much poorer than the UK. And I guess it just wouldn't be fair. They definitely don't have the wealth.
Did you need or want to go
I know
to
who still
Barcelona?
does, and it's America.
You want to be from Jerusalem?
You heard that, JT?
Yeah.
You know what it's
Goddamn.
happening.
Yo,
I'm making
JT,
my
I'm
way to the boat
expecting
now.
like
Someone say
5...
beer.
JT, I'm expecting 5,000 my PayPal by the end of this interview for reparations. If you're true...
You what?
You just want beer now? You're an alcoholic?
Maybe I want some.
You want beer?
Maybe.
What? What kind of beer?
No, I'm joking. I don't. Well, I kind of do, but I don't.
I'm a little confused.
He's undecided.
Yeah, I'm kind of like undecided.
You're communist.
The good thing is I have control over this entire podcast finances. So, boys, I'm sorry. I'm taking your shares and sending them up.
Yeah.
Why does part of
God
you want
bless.
beer?
The thing is, I would say I don't want Americans to pay reparations.
Be
I just
cool.
want it to balkanize.
That's the part that wants to put it in. Be cool.
Be cool. I like that.
Yeah, it might be that degenerate part.
And I say this like this. I mean, in a half joking way, because the balkanization would be funny because that evil empire would be destroyed. But also it'd be funny because you know they're gonna make the real Balkans look like a fucking joke with the nonsense they're gonna bring up. Texans already are so fucking weird about it.
Yeah.
And they're part of the same country.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a reason I always say, Texas is the best damn country in America. It's because we do genuinely think of ourselves as another country. Like, say, Alaska's kind of the same way, California's kind of the same way. So yeah, I can't wait for the the inevitable war with Oklahoma where we just stomp them day one.
Be playing Destiny today.
You seem
Well, you know
mighty
who is an actual... You know who is an actual country within America? It's Hawaii. Hawaii isn't American at all.
Yeah.
They need to
It's like the one time you could do it, and it
ends
ends more
hard.
I mean, what part didn't they colonize of the North American continent? None of it belongs to them. It's the same Zionist talking points, and then they're gonna and then you're like, okay, but what about the Native Americans? Like, no, that's not what we mean. Not that kind of
like
indigenous. They were genocided slightly too soon. Look, if you have a claim to a country, no matter how nebulous and how old, as long as it's over 2,000 years old, it's fine. But if it's 200 years and you have an established presence for like minimum 15,000,
that's bullshit.
No. Yeah.
You're being unrealistic. How can it be 200 years?
Here's a much more important question. I think you can really delve into this deeply with you. You were known to be a smoker.
No way, dude. Who let you know that?
of some level, as
Jesus. Mal, prepare now. Some preaching is.
Here we go.
No, I won't preach to you.
Just put on the face that you put on in front of your mom, and then this is what.
I will say something. Not about smoking. I will say something. The slang in Arabic for around smoking is the best. There's no comparison. I've never heard anything in English that even remotely comes close. In Iraq, for example, when somebody says, I want to light a cigarette, they say "Aridatuk jigara." That literally means I would like to burst a cigarette. And it means to just light one up, basically. Yeah. But even light one up it's such a the weight of it is heavier. But this is not what I mean. My question is much more directly focused on since your name is Wamao. And you're a smoker.
Yeah.
And Mao was known to have a particular favorite brand of cigarettes, a particular tobacco. I think it was Hubei province tobacco. I don't remember now. What is yours? What is your poison of choice? And we'll see you and Hugo fight it out.
I don't know if you can hear this, but my cat is fucking begging for food right now.
Give her the rest of the cig.
I always smoke around my cat, and I'm a little bit scared that she's gonna get a disease from it one day. But hopefully, she outlives me.
I'm sorry, I was gonna be so racist. Yeah. No, I was gonna be like,
whoa! What do you say?
You fill in the blank. Oh my god! No, I was.
I'm gonna cut her open one day. I'm gonna find a tumor, and I'm gonna be pissed.
No, poor thing. What's her name?
Sushi.
Oh, that's adorable.
I know. It doesn't make things better, does it?
Oh, yeah.
After the racism comment, yeah, didn't help at all. Jesus.
My racism comment wasn't about Asians and like cats or something. No, my racism comment was about you being Filipino and her getting a disease by proxy of by her being close. This is an obvious joke. I'm sorry.
Man.
Oh Lord.
Something I ate, man. It got the cats.
Oh my god.
Before I answer your question about what cigarette brand I like most, I want you to know that I lived in the Middle East for 5 years, actually. That's where I picked up smoking.
Oh, damn. Okay, yeah, no wonder.
The cigarettes there are so goddamn cheap. I fucking love hookah, man. It's the best thing to do after a night out.
Yeah, and it's also the worst thing for your health. I say this. My mother
What do you mean after a night out? Why don't you sit, drink, and smoke hookah? Like you don't have to do it after.
Well, usually with my friends, we well, you can't get alcohol in the Middle East very easily, so we usually get it from our parents. We steal it from our parents' fridges, and we all band together, drink as much alcohol as we can in one room in our house, and then we all leave to go smoke hookah while we're pissed fucking drunk.
But are like I'm not gonna ask you to specify the country and so on, but can't you like kind of get around it? Like, I don't know, pour vodka in a water bottle and shit, and then just...
I mean, oh no, you could like contact the Indians. Right? The Indian workers, they've always got a network for alcohol.
That's lore. So there's Indian workers that can get you alcohol in the Middle East.
Yeah. It's but that's too much of a headache than steal from your parents' fridge.
Yeah.
You know?
This is a Gulf. Yeah, exactly right.
Oh man, you pinpointed the Gulf.
I know. I didn't pinpoint. I know exactly where. I'm not gonna. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
I do it as well. He told me, "No, I'm in this very specific country." I'm like, okay, I'm not even gonna ask questions.
But anyways, you didn't answer the question.
My favorite brand, Riverstone has been there for me on my lowest because it's so goddamn cheap. It's right now in the UK. This is gonna blow your minds. The UK is the most expensive tobacco in the world. It's £12.
Jesus Christ
for a pouch.
Is it even good? Tobacco?
But Riverstone is like not that bad, you know? Like I've had tobacco that's made me fucking choke and cry and fucking scream out in anger. But Riverstone has always been nice to me. So I'm always happy to have it around. Maybe if I get like a good payday or like the Moker earned another 1,000 views that month, I'll treat myself to Marlboro.